Well, anyway, I got through my sophomore year. My grades actually got a little bit better, and went into the summer, and again I worked full time for Herbie at H&E, and started the next semester, my junior year, and that turned out better. I had pretty good grades, and of course I was in ROTC, and I had a sergeant that worked there at the ROTC office. There was like 4 people in the office. There was a head guy, and then there was a captain, and then there was Jack Nystrom. He was a staff sergeant, and he was way too old to be a staff sergeant. He'd got in trouble somewhere and got busted, but he took a liking to me, and he was always helping me, giving me tips on this, that, and the other. And he told me one day, he says, "Hey, Vanover," he says, "why aren't you signed up to be a pilot?" He said, "You don't wear glasses, do you?" I said, No, I don't wear glasses. I get good eyesight." And he said, "Well, look," he said, "if you're going to make anything of yourself in the Air Force, you're going to have to be a rated pilot." And I said, "Well, nobody even talked to me like that before." I said, "What do I do?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to give you some books to read." He went over to the school library, checked out 2 or 3 books, and one of them I had to go over there and look at because they wouldn't check it out. But it had tips on how to identify this and topography and stuff like that, where you could, have a little bit of knowledge about flying. And so he said, "Okay, I'm going to give you the test." And so he put me in a room, and I took the test. And I really don't know how well I did, but Jack Nystrom made sure I passed. And he came back about 3 or 4 days later. He said, "Hey, Vanover," he says, "you passed the flight test great." And he says, "You can either be a pilot or you can be a navigator." And I said, "Oh, I want to be a pilot then." He said, "That's a great idea." And so he signed me up for to advance into the pilot training once I graduated. And so went the rest of that year. And while I was in TCU, I also joined a fraternal organization tied in with ROTC, Arnold Air Society. And so I belonged to that. It didn't have any meetings or parties and drinking and all that kind of stuff. It was just a semblance of a fraternity. So anyway, I finished my junior year. Grades weren't great, but I was still positive. I was on probation a couple times during my school tenure, because if you got your grade point average below 2, which was a C average, you went on probation, and if you didn't make up that and get off probation, get above at a 2 or above, then you had to drop out. Well, I always managed to get just above, and I think I ended up with the 4 years, I had a 2.2 grade point average. But anyway, so here I am in the summer of my junior year, and 2 things happened. I got to go to what the ROTC summer camp. It was a 6-week kind of like basic training activities where you got up and did running and calisthenics, and you went to classes and more running and marching and inspections and all that kind of stuff. And of course, Jack Nystrom, he said you got to volunteer to do some extra duty thing to make make them impressed by you. And he says, so volunteer for something, no matter what it is. And he said, make sure that your shoes are shined all the time. And I said, okay. I said, but he said, you're going to get dusty and dirty and all that, and then they're going to have an inspection right after you get back from this run. So I figured out, I went down to some shoe store and I bought me a pair of military dress shoes that were made out of plastic. And boy, you talk about a shine, those things were shiny. And so when I went to summer camp, and it was down at James Conley Air Force Base in Waco, Texas. And I was there for 6 weeks, and they started asking, first as soon as we got there, they asked us, we have some extracurricular, extra duty jobs, if anybody wants to volunteer. And they named a couple of different things, and I'm going, boy, I don't want to do any of that stuff. And they were getting toward the end, I think, so they said, we need someone to lead calisthenics. Well, I raised my hand real quick. I said, I can do that. I'm in great shape. And so I got to be one of the squad leaders in the calisthenics, which meant at least one day a week I led the 250 people or however many it was in our class in calisthenics, jumping jacks and push-ups and all this kind of stuff. So I even got in better shape. In fact, the last day that we had the program and we were doing our calisthenics, I was the leader, and everybody went through all of the different procedures, and then we had to run a mile at the end. And I ran a 5-minute and 12-second mile, which at that time the world's record was 4 minutes. So I was really pretty good shape, and I'm glad I was. But it's kind of hard to yell out the commands for the other people to do push-ups or jumps or whatever, and talk at the same time, which helped me get in even better shape. So anyway, so we finished that program and came back, and I ended up number 3 in the ROTC group. So I had some title of executive officer or something like that. And a friend of mine named Gordon Blevins, he was number 1, and a guy named Mike Herndon, he was number 2. And so I was number 3, which I had been probably number 50 if normally. But so we got through that, and then the nice surprise part is they said all of the people who signed up to be pilots and passed the test, we're going to get you your private pilot's license while you're here in ROTC, and we're going to pay for 100% of it. And I thought, wow, that's great. So we ended up starting out to Oak Grove Airport, which was south of Fort Worth toward Cleburne, and we had like 2 months to get at least 40 hours of flying time and pass the private pilot's license. And so I was kind of nervous about that because I had never really had the desire to fly. But I said, I can't miss up this opportunity. If I'm going to be in the Air Force, I might as well, be something that's going to be important. So I went down there, and they had a instructor that was overweight, smoked like a train, drank coffee out of a cup that hadn't been cleaned, they said, in 15 years. And from the looks of the inside, I think it was conservative 15 years. And this guy ate aspirin like they were M&Ms. And every time before he and I'd get ready to go out and fly, he'd reach in this giant jar of aspirin and pick up a handful of them, throw them in his mouth, take a swig of his coffee, and off we'd go to fly. And he said more than one time, Vanover, you're going to kill both of us, after some mistake that I had made. And one of the worst parts of the training was you had to put the airplane into a stall, and you had to recover from the stall. And that is the most scary thing that you can do in an airplane, is to make it quit flying. Because the first thing that happens is the nose drops, and you start accelerating. And if you just pull back on the yoke to fly level, you'll break the wings off. So, it took quite a bit of learning, but I finally got it, and I passed my check ride and got my private pilot's license. So I was really proud of that. And so anyway, back to school, and I remember working one day. It was almost time for about the start of the last semester. And Herbie Paul, I was at work, and he come up. He said, "Well, how's school going?" I said, "I was doing really good." And I said, "But I'm going to have to quit this last semester." I said, "I've got to get my grades above the average I have now, or they're not going to let me graduate." And he said, "I'll tell you what, you cut your hours back and just work a day or two a week." He said, "I just don't want to lose you." And he said, "Besides," he said, "you see that guy up there in the front?" And that was the store manager. His name was Jack Draper. And Jack was way overweight, smoked like a train, and was always screaming and yelling about something. Something was always wrong. And sweating all the time and nervous. I mean, just a basket case. And he said, old Jack there, he's not going to be here forever. And I was thinking to myself, no, he's probably going to have a heart attack right now. And he said, he's not going to be here forever. And he says, you can have his job. And I looked up there and I go, the last thing, to myself, I said, the last thing I want to do is have that man's job. That's got to be the worst job in the world. I'd rather be in a foxhole in Vietnam, But I said, let me just cut my hours back. And I said, I'll work a little bit, but I really want to concentrate on my schoolwork. So he said, okay, so just whatever hours you want to work, you do it. And so I worked all day Saturdays, and I worked a couple afternoons a week. So, it took about 20 hours off my work schedule. But at the same time, I was doing better in school. So come to time for graduation, and everybody had to go to a counselor and make sure you had all the credits that you needed and you were good to graduate. And of course, it was in the last semester, so there wasn't any time for, hey, you made a mistake or you don't have enough of this or that. If you didn't have it, you just didn't graduate. And so I went down, sit down with this lady, and that's the first time anybody in my entire college career had sit down and give me some advice on what I should do or not do. So she sat down and she said, she said, I got bad news. I said, what's that? And she says, you're short one class. You need 3 credits in sociology or something. And I go, you got to be kidding me. I said, why didn't somebody tell me this before? I said, I've been taking elective courses in business, and I could have taken the 3 hours. She said, well, wait a minute. She said, let me look at it. And I said, and besides that, I said, the day I graduate, the next day I'm supposed to be commissioned in the Air Force and go to pilot training, and I can't miss that. And she fumbled around there with my transcripts and looked at it. She said, I'm going to move this course over to sociology, and you're going to graduate. So that was very fortunate. I hated to have that come to an end that way. So anyway, it came to the graduation day, and I forget, there was like 2,000 students that were graduating that day. And we walked across the aisle, and I was just overwhelmed the fact that I managed to pass that. But the one thing that my dad told me that made more of an impression on me than anything else, he said, don't start anything that you don't finish. Don't matter whether you need it or don't want it or whatever, you finish what you start. And that's what kept me going in college. There's a lot of times I had no social life. I had no life at all except going to work, going to school, and studying. And so it wasn't a real happy, days with partying and all that kind of stuff, except for the first year. But I managed to make up all those hours, and so went to graduation ceremony. We got graduated on May 29th. I forget, it must have been a Saturday or whatever, 1966. And I'd managed to get my 120 hours credit in 4 years. Of course, that meant going to summer school, the sophomore and the junior year, one term. So the very next day, May 30th, all of the ROTC graduates, and there was like 6 or 7 of us that were seniors and had graduated the day before. They had a swearing-in ceremony for us, and of course, Mom and Dad were there too for that. Besides the graduation, and I got commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. And along with the graduation ceremony, we got our orders, and my orders were to report to Laredo Air Force Base, Laredo, Texas, on August 1st. And my class number would be Class 66A. At that time, the Air Force had a physical year ending on May 30th, and the new year started July 1st, and we were the first class to start after July 1st. And so I had about almost 2 months off before I had to report to Laredo. And so I actually kind of goofed off a little bit then. I worked a couple days a week, even in that time. No school, but I just didn't want to put in all those hours again. And besides, I was afraid if I hurt myself or get in a car wreck or something, then I won't be physically able to go to pilot training. So I got to be really careful and cautious. But all in all, like I say, I am so glad that I had the drive to stay in college. Even though I didn't have the intelligence to excel in college, I got through it. That was the main motivation that I had to stay in there, thanks to my dad, and thanks to I guess a little bit of effort on my part too.